The immortal friends are in a villa in Croatia. They are chasing the bad guy. They have a certain amount of time to do it, a certain amount of tools, and a certain amount of vigor. My name is Victoria Mahoney, and I'm here to break down a scene for The Old Guard 2. The sequence is exterior at the beginning, but we're coming to the interior. We ended up looking at tons of places. We landed on this villa that Enrico, our location scout, found. We enjoyed it because it allowed us space, movement, and functionality. Functionality for fights, functionality for crew, functionality for load-in, functionality for design, and functionality for things to break. So one of the challenges for me as a visual learner is if you cut from the interior of a building to the exterior of two people in a car chase and then cut back to the building and I see one hue, I don't know, are they in the same room? Are they in a different room? Are they upstairs? Are they downstairs? I get confused. So I wanted a visual cue so that we could show progression of time. So as you'll see through the house, there's different hues. There's a magenta, then there's a fuchsia, then there's yellow, then there's a green. We tried to do Roy G. Biv, it didn't entirely work out. But so each room has a distinct color. Then we did all this work in that because I wanted to have the color speak to the emotion of what the character was fighting, and in this case, primarily Andy. So if she was just getting her legs, if she was just figuring out a weapon and how to use it and like ripping something off the wall, if she was in her high form or if she was in discovery, if she was running and moving or if she was in the middle of fighting four people. So I wanted the color to match the emotion of what she was experiencing, and we purposely picked colors that had a sense of folly. The opening sequence required levity. We wanted levity because it was a tag to the first film and how we left the group of friends, immortals, in that wonderful, wonderful closing of the first film where they are all together and they move forward in a pack and they're with Copley and Andy saying, we're going to do good and you're going to help us. And so we are now fast forward to the moment where you see them out in the world and they've been doing good and they're enjoying it and they are working as a team. And so I didn't want the heaviness and seriousness of a stately place. So that's a big part of the colors when you move through and how that's all very specific. First of all, if the person who owned the villa was the kid of the person who we normally think in movies would own such a place, right? So this is the offspring, and I made up this crazy backstory that the kid went to Eton or whatever and studied and trained, and they fancy themselves to be an art collector, but it's the art that you look at when you walk in places and you see and you think, who would ever buy that? And I thought that it was a bit cheeky, and Pocky and I had a ball with that in the art department. And so we took all these things you would normally see. So for example, there are cherubs. You're going to now see all these as Easter eggs through the sequence. The cherubs, when you see them, instead of having the cherubs that you're like, oh, I've seen 1,000 times, I asked them to put graffiti on them. So we have some of them with broken hearts. So each thing, we kind of tried to spin it on its head. We had fun poking, little jabs at institutionalized art and what is considered acceptable and unacceptable. And so with that theme, we had a ball telling the audience who this character is and allowing our characters to move about in a place and identify in the edit what space they were in and how the progression of time. We couldn't break or touch the walls. We couldn't do any damage or like lean on a wall in a certain way. So we had to construct items that we would break, or the stunt scenes would surround items that we brought in. Everything you see, every single thing you see on frame, our team brought in. Chiwetel can fight, he's great. And I was like, let's just put him on wall to wall. And that's one of the spaces where I was telling you that I wanted it just like altered states. There's a moment where he's trying to shake the thing out and it was like, bah, 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 on the wall. It was so cool. I wanted that. But when the stunt friends went in to speak to the owners of that villa, we were not allowed to touch the walls. So we couldn't put an actor's body on the wall like that. We couldn't do any sense. So they had to construct a fight that was really raw and ragged, but in that center space, mano a mano, without touching the walls. The building itself, the reason that we enjoyed this facility is when Pocky and I went early days on our own, me, Pocky, and Enrico, we walked it, and when I walked it, I was able to move through the building in a way that you could have fight 1, fight 2, fight 3, fight 4, fight 5, fight 6, fight 7, fight 8, fight 9. There's a rhythm of flow that you want in any scene, dramatic or otherwise. So especially with regards to action, and you want to propel it. So the idea that something's going forward is exciting. And I took this video on my phone. It's like a little Canon S9 V, and I walked it through, and Pocky was with me, and I walked the entire sequence and talked it through and sent that to the stunt team who was in LA training with Charlize. So I walked through of which room and why and where they, possible beats. And again, that's based on budget. So whatever amount of money we have and how many rooms we could decorate, how much light came in the room. So for our cinematographer, Barry Ackroyd, which areas were friendly and functional for camera and light, which ones caused problems, which one gave us latitude, which one gave us restriction. So all these discussions occurred before the stunt team ever arrived. And the map of just that flow that you end up seeing in the film was great. And then there's a funny piece of trivia is the stunt team wasn't with us for so much of it, and they were in LA, and they had added this extra beat. And this is trivia. They added this extra beat, and it was lovely. But as most films do, at one point in pre-production, everyone gets a call on the red line, the red phone, and you are asked to reduce your budget. Every department. So Pocky, to reduce his budget, we cut one of the rooms out. It was the only way to make the other rooms where we knew we had to have the sequences, especially the big window sequence. We knew that these particular beats we could not omit, but this one space, if we were to try to truncate it and just use the wall and get around, we would be okay. So when the stunt team showed up, they were close to actual principal photography, as I shared, and they had added this beat. And when we were doing the rehearsal, like the day prior to filming the scene, we had to make space for it, and things had to change. And Pocky looked at me, and I promised him in pre-production we would not shoot in that room because he was not dressing it, because it's a set we couldn't afford to decorate. He said, please don't get on the day and then you're going to shoot this and it's not dressed in the right way and it's not our team's best work. Like, just promise me and I'll make all this other stuff great for you. It's like, without a doubt, it ended up that beat was in that space. And I looked at Pocky, with all the pain in my heart, and he never said a word, and he never complained. He never complained. They just rejigged, we moved. And as I'm telling you that story, me and Pocky are the only people who know that. The window is the magnum opus. So when we walked into this villa, this operatic window, this incredible sort of whoa, it was just it's ridiculous. In life, it's commanding, and to have the lake right behind it in that manner. So when we were on the scout, I came back and I was sitting in front of that window, and I just sat on the floor, and it was empty. There was no furniture in the room, and I just sat and I was staring at it, and I just heard this voice say, someone's got to come through that window. Then we get in the car, and I'm drawing out the sequence on just a pen and a paper, I always have a pen and a paper, just drawing it out of someone coming through, and I realize it's too big. Like when I drew the body and I realized two people have to go through that window. So something must happen with two people in that window. So one coming in, one going out, two people go, whatever it was. So I drew that out, and then I sent it to a couple of the producers that were on that scout. And then I was so excited because everyone came together. All the discussions about just the glass, the texture of the glass, how do we do that? So VFX discussions were involved. Then the stunt team, the wiring, the rigging team, everyone had to figure out and do a great deal of math and come together to find out how to efficiently and elegantly, in an exciting manner, pull this off. And, the ratio of where she would come in and where the person would go out. And it was always designed that Andy and Copley were inside fighting, and then Niall is outside fighting. So that was set up on purpose. We have interior, exterior, guys on the car chase. So you have this three-prong war. And then it turns into sort of a four-prong war to a degree, because Copley fighting in that little room, which was a bit of Jason Bourne style, just mano a mano, while we were downstairs first unit shooting Charlize and the big fella on their fight scene in the yellow room, that apex. So all that footage from the pink room to the guy falling through the table. So when we're shooting Andy's progression in the house through all the different bodies that she's accumulating, getting to that yellow, to the big fella, the big bad boy. And then the apex of that. So when he goes out, Dan Bradley's upstairs at the exact same time shooting Niall. The same day, the same minute. He is upstairs shooting Niall, and he shot that boat bit, and he was upstairs shooting her on that balcony. Everything that happens on that balcony to then get her down to come through the window. We're first unit downstairs with Andy, and bam, the timing, and Niall comes through the window. That three-prong thing, it's very, very Godfather. It's a school of Godfather. I mean, that to me it was. So my principle of it was you have these disparate events occurring at the same time. And for me, the concern of how they would cut together wasn't as much as are the vital pieces there. So the rhythm of it would be whether we spent 3 minutes here. There was one point that I wanted, sort of it would be a gradation of we're with this one for 15 seconds and 15 seconds, 15 seconds. Then we're with 7 seconds, 7 seconds. Then it's 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds. So it's jumping from interior to upstairs to the guys on the road. But it didn't really work like that. We just had to get the elements and make sure all the elements were there. And from that point, then find a cohesive pace that sustained urgency and excitement and awe. And I love that sequence so much.
Sunrise upstairs.
The Uma and Charlize fight was something I live for, in the same way that I live for the Kiki and Van fight, in the same way that I live for the Andy and Van fight. Casting that individual, knowing they were going to fight against Charlize, was vital. And that person had to have a skill set and the ability to move and to capture nuance in performance and in battle. They had to have psychological warfare. And the idea that we were going to gift audiences this sequence between Charlize and Uma will remain a great joy. And the way that was orchestrated dramatically to battle, drama, offense, defense, right? That I find really exciting. I can't wait for audiences to have it.